Hare Krishna to all of you. I'm very happy to be with you. And Bhakti Vinod Maharaj asked me to speak on the topic of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very vast topic. I'll try to give some introduction to this topic or some review of this topic of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, so that we could have pretty clear understanding why this description is there in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's an important canto because according to the explanation of the Acharyas, the real narration of Srimad Bhagavatam starts with third canto. Or rather, at the end of the second canto, the narration already starts, but the reality, and we will see, according to the design of this third canto, that this is the real beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. First two cantos were like introduction to the whole topic, and the first two cantos were mostly teaching the methodology how to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. The first canto was explaining the necessity of hearing it in a proper mood, with a proper attention and proper faith. Why it is always stressed that we should hear from Guru, because Guru is naturally somebody in whom we have faith, and therefore the hearing transforms into something, into devotional process. When we hear, we always hear something for the entertainment's sake. This is not going to work when it comes to Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is supposed to be heard in a proper mood and with a proper attitude. So that's basically the topic of the first canto, and the second canto is explaining the story of Srimad Bhagavatam, how Srimad Bhagavatam was transmitted ultimately from Lord Krishna to Brahma, from Brahma to Narada, and how Narada started preaching it all over the world. And of course, Chatushloki of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we will touch this subject matter a little bit in our presentation today, is also described in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's the introduction. And to start our little class on this subject matter, I would like to chant and read the translation and purport to the verse number 2 of the 5th chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vidura's talk with Maitreya. That's the first question of Vidura, and basically the answers to Vidura's questions, they constitute third and fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. These two very big cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, they all conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. Vidura asks questions and Maitreya answers the questions. And therefore, the first question, the very first question of Vidura is very important because it indicates the purpose of these two cantos, which, as I already said, are the answer to Vidura's questions, and specifically to this first question. So let's hear what Vidura is asking. Vidura uvacha sukhaya karmani karoti loko natai sukham vanya tu paramam va vindeta bhuyastata eva dukham yad atra yuktam bhagavan vaden nah. Vidura uvacha, Vidura said, sukhaya, for attaining happiness, karmani, fruitive activities, karoti, everyone does so, lokaha, in this world, na, never, taihi, by those activities, sukham, any happiness, va, or, anyat, differently, uparamam, satiation, va, either, vendetta, achieves bhuya. On the contrary, tataha, by such activities, eva dukkham, miseries, yat, that which, atra, under the circumstances, yuktam, right course, Bhagavan, or great one, vadet, may kindly enlighten, naha, us. Translation. Vidura said, O great sage, everyone in this world engages in fruitive activities to attain happiness, but one finds neither association nor the mitigation of distress. On the contrary, one is only aggravated by such activities. Please, therefore, give us direction on how one should live for real happiness. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Prabhupada. Vidura asked Maitreya some common questions, which was not originally his intention. Uddhava asked Vidura to approach Maitreya Muni and inquire unto all the truths concerning the Lord, His name, fame, quality, form, pastimes, entourage, etc. And thus, when Vidura approached Maitreya, he should have asked only about the Lord. But out of natural humility, he did not immediately ask about the Lord, but inquired into a subject which would be of a great importance to the common man. A common man cannot understand the Lord. He must first know the real position of his life under the influence of the illusory energy. In illusion, one thinks that he can be happy only by fruitive activities. But what actually happens is that one becomes more and more entangled in the network of action and reaction and does not find any solution to the problem of life. There is a nice song in this connection. Because of a great desire to have all happiness in life, I built this house, but unfortunately, the whole scheme was turned into ashes because the house was unexpectedly set on fire. The law of nature is like that. Everyone tries to become happy by planning in the material world, but the law of nature is so cruel that it sets fire to one's schemes. The fruitive worker is not happy in his schemes, nor is there any satiation of his continuous hankering for happiness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I forget to chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, so let's do it now. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayet Nashta Prayeshva Badrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayana Virahakatara Juhava Putreti Tanmayatayo Taravo Binedus Tam Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi Ayantah Pradishya Mama Vachimam Prasuktam Sanjivayata Kila Shakti Darakshvadhamna Anyamscha Hasta Charana Shravana Tvagadim Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam Svasyastu Vishwasya Kalah Prasidatam Deyantu Bhutani Shivam Mitodiya manascha badram bhajata tadokshaje aveshyatam no matir apyahaitu ki. So, in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the entire scheme of Srimad Bhagavatam was described in a very interesting and profound way. It was said in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that the real subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam is Ashraya. Ashraya means the absolute truth, the Supreme Lord, the ultimate shelter. Something which we should all take shelter of. He is Sharaniyam. He is worthy of taking shelter of. And in reality, Srimad Bhagavatam is describing only Ashraya, that means Krishna. And of course, we know that the real description of Ashraya is in the 10th canto, but at the same time, it is explained in the same section of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 10th chapter of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that for people it's very difficult to understand absolute truth. Why it is difficult to understand absolute truth for ordinary people? The reason is very simple. Because it's absolute truth. And we are relative. We have relative consciousness, we have relative experience, and anything which is absolute is very difficult for us to understand. Anything which is absolute, when we hear the description of something which has absolute nature, immediately we project our relative experience onto the sphere of absolute. It's very difficult for us to imagine even that something doesn't have beginning and end. Something is endless and beginningless. It's not possible because we only have experience of something which has the beginning and has an end. And the whole meaning which we have in this life is in relationship with the things which have beginning and has end. And therefore, when we hear, about absolute truth, we naturally start projecting our experience into the sphere of absolute truth. And another problem is that absolute truth, because it's absolute truth, it contains everything, all the contradictions which are there. And for us, again, being programmed in a certain way in this material world, contradictions are really, something which is not very pleasant, because we cannot really understand how, at the same time, an entity may be limited and unlimited, may be completely very big, huge, and at the same time endless, and at the same time have a form. How one entity can be very kind and at the same time creating this cruel world. We always try to apply material logic to the sphere of transcendence. And therefore, when we take any religion, any other religion, Krishna consciousness is not a religion. Srila Prabhupada used to say that this is the science. So in science, everything is possible. In religion, not much is possible. So when we take any kind of religion, and the founders of any religious movement, they very carefully try to protect their followers from this mistake, to project their material experience into the sphere of transcendence. And therefore, ultimately, they cannot say anything about the Lord. They can only say, He is what He is. he is something which we cannot really say, because as soon as we start saying something about the Lord, he loses his transcendence. He becomes the subject of our understanding, which is logical understanding, and ultimately people will not have any understanding of the Lord and will not have the proper attitude towards the Lord. So therefore, the creators of other religions, they prefer not to speak about the Lord at all. You know, Lord Jesus Christ, he said, yes, I can say to you something, but you will not understand. The Prophet Muhammad also said something similar, that I know more, but you will not be able to comprehend. And but Shukadeva Goswami, he knows everything, and he explains it in such a way that dull as we are, we still will be able to understand if we go properly through this scheme of Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore, in this very second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, shelter, ultimate truths, Satyam Param, on which the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is the meditation on. This ultimate truth, Satyam Param, is Angi. Angi means complete whole. Something complete. But Shukadeva Goswami is taking the methodology, and he says that I will explain to you Angi for your understanding, so that you can have complete thing through different Angas which are understandable. What people do when they're encountered with the knowledge which is so big, vast, and incomprehensible, they try to separate this knowledge. Because it's not possible to get this vast knowledge into our limited intelligence. So they're trying to chop it down into little pieces. But ultimately, they will not get anything as a result of this process. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami himself says, I will chop it down. You listen how I do it, and you try to go very carefully and systematically through these angas, parts of the whole, and then at the end, you will assemble the whole. The absolute truth, you will get the complete understanding of the absolute truth. So that's the beautiful scheme of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. We understand Angi, and that's the purpose of the whole book. By trying to understand Angas, starting with Sarga. Atra Sarga Visarga Shastanam Poshanam Utaya Manvantarya Shanukatha Nirodam Mukti Rashraya. So this 10 subject matters, starting with Sarga, is to explain Ashraya in such a way that we will be able to understand Ashraya. Otherwise, there is no way to understand Ashraya. That's a very important point, which I want to stress again. Srila Prabhupada explains it again and again and again, especially in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is that there is a very scientific methodology to understand the real subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, and one has to employ this scientific methodology. Otherwise, one will be cheated at the end. People trying to jump over to the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, people are trying to relish this Lila Katha. But before you really understand what this Lila Katha is all about, and you will feel the emotional content of this Lila Katha, before you will be able to participate in this Lila as the natural participant. And that's basically the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, is the invitation to participate in the Lila of the Lord. When Lord Krishna comes to this world, he comes for this purpose. He's inviting us, come, 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 come. But before we will be able to do it, before we will be able to really transfer our consciousness from this relative material world into the sphere of transcendence, into the sphere where this endless blissful leelas always going on, we have to go through a certain process, and this process will prepare our consciousness for this understanding. Пожалуйста, выключи. Кто-то звонит. Выключи весь этот самый. Sorry, there was a phone call. And starting from the third canto, or rather from the end of the second canto, we start this process. And at the end of the second canto, there is a very interesting statement where Shukadeva Goswami is explaining to Maharaja Parikshit why the subject matter of creation is repeated so many times in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Because the first topic of Srimad Bhagavatam is Sarga, which is creation. And naturally, and this creation is being described in the second and the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, I think 7 times, but maybe more, because it's repeated again and again and again, and you ultimately lose the counts how many times the same subject matter of creation is being described. So naturally, the question arises, why? Why, from the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, from the 5th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we know the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is about Krishna Lila. Narada Muni comes and he chastises Vyasadeva, you didn't describe Krishna Lila. And Vyasadeva says, yes, I didn't describe Krishna Lila. And he sits down, he gets into samadhi, and he starts writing this book, and he describes the creation 7 times. Instead of coming directly to Krishna Lila. What's going on? What's wrong? What kind of disciple you are? You said, I will do it. Why you're not doing this? Or at least, if not Krishna Lila, just describe something nice about Kurma avatar, or, how Kurma avatar is being, how his back is being scratched by Mandara mountain, Start with something juicy. Why you're doing all this dry stuff, Sankhya, again and again and again, Ahankara and Chitta and, Buddhi and Manas and Tanmatras and repeat it 7 times. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, commenting on this verse, he says that, my dear sir, you are not capable of understanding this subject matter at this moment. Please be honest. Please be sincere and admit to yourself that you're not yet ready to understand this, even though there is a craving. But ultimately, what will happen if you start listening this katha, you will just enjoy, you will try to enjoy it with the same enjoying spirit. You will approach this very sacred subject matter with the enjoying spirit, and you will spoil everything. And definitely you will not be able to enter into this lila, because, for enjoyers, there is a special place, special zone is there. Like zone, in Russia, zone means the labor camp. In ISKCON, of course, zone means something else. But zone is zone. Zone means not a very nice place. So, GBC zone. So, basically, we're in this zone. And before entering into the Krishna Lila, which is not a zone, which is a nice place, we need to change the consciousness. The consciousness should be transformed. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur very interestingly explains, he said that there are two kinds of people in this world. Why people are not really able or capable of understanding Lila Katha, because basically there are two categories of people. One, who are enjoying, they're sleeping. If everything is nice, they're just like sleeping and they think, oh, so nice, so nice. I'm so happy. Life is so nice, you know. And then there are some other people who fainted because of sufferings. So people are either, they're, in both ways, they're unconscious. They're either enjoying some illusory dream-like happiness, and they're not really ready to understand the truth or to get in touch with the truth, or they are completely absorbed in their sufferings, and it's like they fainted. They're unconscious. They're in this state of complete unconsciousness. And therefore, Lila Katha, in a proper way, they're not really, you know, there are some plugs there. You know, very special plugs of the false ego. So Lila Katha doesn't enter and doesn't go into the heart. It's just, we get a very primitive and naive reflection of Lila of the Lord. And therefore, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives a very interesting example. He says that according to Ayurveda, if you have some problem with the fire, if you burnt your hand with the fire, to cure yourself from this burn, you need to apply some hot ointment. Not cool ointment, but the hot ointment. You know, sometimes people, they think if they burn, they need to put some cool thing. It will only aggravate the whole situation. I know once a devotee got very severe burns, and we put cooling ghee, and it became worse. So instead, we should have put there black pepper or something like this. But the black pepper, you know, somehow or other, it cures this disease. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that, you know, to get rid of this disease of Maya or attachment or absorption in this material world, we really need to hear about the nature of Maya again and again and again. So the answer to this initial question which I put, why does this topic of creation is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam so many times, the reason is very simple. To help us to become free from this enjoying spirit. We hear about the composition of Maya, about the mechanism of Maya, about the very ingenious creation of the Lord, how He created this material world. And by hearing again and again and again this Srishti Lila, the Lila of creation, by understanding the proper idea behind this creation. Because people, they are very naive. You know, they think, you know, this world is for my enjoyment. So by understanding the intricate design behind this world, you know, naturally some people, they are inquisitive, they want to hear about this. Actually, the subject matter of creation, you know, devotees, of course, they're a separate category, they're very special, they are not normal people. But normal people, they would like to hear about, how this world is composed. There are scientific magazines describing this creation, this Big Bang, or, small bang, all these banks which are going on. So people are inquisitive. So what's happening, if I understand the subject matter properly, why I'm saying this, because this is the key to understand the second canto, the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. If I understand the subject matter properly, then we will naturally develop the faith, by going through this. The first thing which we have to understand by going through this third canto is that this material world is not here by chance. The scientists, the whole idea of science is just by all means to understand this, to prove this stupid idea is that everything is just here by chance. I'm by chance. There was this little bacteria in the primordial soup. There was this big soup, and somehow or other some bacteria appeared in this soup. And then this bacteria crawled out from the soup and ultimately evolved into, Bhakti Vijnana Goswami. So that's the glorious origin, or whatever. The whole idea of the science is just to prove completely against logic, because it's not logical. It's against the third law of thermodynamics. That the very complex structure somehow or other appears on its own, which contains so much information. There are three, if I don't, how many? 3 trillion cells in a human body. Much more than humans in this material world. 3 trillion, in our brain, in the average brain, there are 80 billion neurons. 80 billion neurons. And that's all somehow or other from one bacteria, from one amoeba. It's ridiculous. If you have a computer, any computer is just a peanuts. It's a little, bacteria in comparison with human brain. But to hope that a computer will assemble itself, just try and wait a little bit. Maybe you will be lucky. Maybe in your kitchen, a computer will appear from your kitchen utensils, after the long process of evolution. It's ridiculous. It's totally unscientific idea. So the whole idea of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, of the beginning of Sarga, what is this topic of Sarga of Srimad Bhagavatam, is to impress upon us, to free us from this illusion that we are independent. Because why people are trying so hard to prove something which is unprovable, something which you can only take as a blind faith, that we are all here, just to prove that we are independent and therefore we can do whatever we like. So if we understand that there is God behind this creation, that there is a conscious design behind this creation, and we are part of this creation, then we naturally will develop faith in the words of God. Then we naturally will develop understanding that we should follow His order or His idea. We're here because He placed us here. And it's not just by chance, not just by some mistake or whatever. And then by developing this idea that we should follow the Lord, we will also understand that Lord created this world. He maintains this world. And we are living in this world. We are living in His house. He created this house. We are tenants in His house, and therefore we have to do something. Being grateful or being normal people, we have to somehow or other say thank you to Him. You know, every now and then we should say to Him, Hare Krishna, or say to the Lord, Hari Bol, you know, chant the holy name. So basically that's the idea behind this description of Sarga. So the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is describing the creation in connection with the Lord, as opposed to so many other theories which are there, including the so-called Vedic theories, Sankhya of the atheist Kapila, and Buddhism, and Vaisheshika, and you know, Vaisheshika is quite atheistic. Everything is coming from the atoms. I will touch it a little bit later. But again, what is important, anyway, let's go point by point. So that was little introduction. Now, it's very interesting if we look very carefully into the whole plot of the third canto. We will understand how geniusly this book is created. So this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam starts with 4 chapters, and in the 4 chapters, the sweet topics of the Supreme Lord are being described in Sankhya, in a very short way. Actually, Shukadev Goswami, answering Maharaja Parikshit questions, in fact, the sages of Naimisharanya asked this question of Sutta Goswami, and Sutta Goswami says, they asked him, what did Vidura do, how he traveled in the world, how he met with sage Maitreya, how he met with Uddhava. And Shukadev Goswami says, amazing. Oh, sorry, Sutta Goswami says, amazing. Exactly the same question was asked by Maharaja Parikshit to Shukadev Goswami. And he starts telling the story, how Shukadev Goswami explaining this subject matters. But in these 4 initial beginning chapters of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, actually the whole 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is described in a very, very beautiful, but at the same time in a very short, abridged version. It's like the trailer, you know, before going to the, before new cinema is being released, the trailer with the best scenes of this new cinema is being shown. You know, come see, look what's going to happen. So Shukadev Goswami, he knows that he will come to this 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, but here he gives a little appetizer. Actually, according to Ayurveda, the proper way of eating big lunch is that you should take sweets in the very beginning, little sweets in the very beginning, then you take so many other stuff, and then you take the same kheer at the very end. So Srimad Bhagavatam is like a good meal, good Ayurvedic meal. You take little kheer in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. This third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam starts with this little appetizing kheer. And then, you know, Shukadev Goswami says, now go through the whole thing, listen about this creation 7 times, and then go through the 4th canto, 5th canto, 6th canto, 7th canto, 8th canto, 9th canto, and then the kheer will be at the end. You will get the whole feast, the whole, you know, big bowl of kheer at the end. So that's what's going on. This is how it is designed. And but it's also interestingly described through the medium of Vidura, through the medium of Vidura story. And in the very beginning, the very first chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is how Vidura, being offended by Duryodhana, left Hastinapur and went on pilgrimage. I was thinking, why this story? Why Shukadev Goswami starts from the house of lack? Actually, he doesn't even start with the story of Vidura. He starts with the story how Dhritarashtra wanted to set fire on the house of lack and wanted to burn Pandavas. Why this is in the very beginning of Krishna's pastimes? And I think there is a reason. Actually, everything in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is not a single word in Srimad Bhagavatam which is kind of superfluous or superficial. Everything is very significant. Srimad Bhagavatam is kavya. So from the very beginning, we have to learn this science, how to understand kavya, how to understand poetry. When Srila Shukadev Goswami starts, again, all of a sudden, he goes back to this Mahabharata story, to this story of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. And the idea is that he actually wants to impress upon us what happens with us when we are living in this material world without understanding that there is God behind this world. We become naturally greedy for material enjoyment, and this natural greed for material enjoyment, or this spirit, exploitive spirit, manifests in all kinds of sinful activities and heinous activities, actually vicious plots which people do in this world just to enjoy, just because of the greed. This is an important point because very important idea of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is to help us to get free from this natural greed for enjoyment with which we are born. When Shukadev Goswami is describing through the mouth of Maitreya the subject matter of sarga, we also have to understand that sarga, or initial creation of this world, also refers to the initial creation of this body. This body, being a little replica of the universe, is created in the same way, and it contains the same ingredients as the big universe. So describing the creation or the scheme, the design of the universe, Shukadev Goswami is also describing to us our own psychological makeup. Who we are, what is our cravings in this world, how it works, and how ultimately to get rid of these cravings and to get rid of these problems. Anyway, we are going through this third canto. Hopefully we will come to it. We already started. So Vidura goes to pilgrimage, being disgusted by the cruel and offensive words of Duryodhana and silence of Dhritarashtra. It was actually very offensive because in front of everyone he was offended by Duryodhana, and Dhritarashtra kept mum. He didn't say a word, he didn't stop Duryodhana. And Vidura, he immediately leaves Hastinapur and he meditates on this event, and he understands that Krishna is behind this. This is again very important story or very important idea for us that if we understand that behind this material world or everything which is happening in this material world, there is God, there is His will, there is His good will, beneficial, benevolent will, then whatever is happening to us, even though superficially it may seem to be inauspicious, we will understand that this is for our benefit. And Vidura, with this understanding, he goes to pilgrimage. And also, very importantly, please listen very carefully, Shukadev Goswami, who is explaining this story, he says that Vidura goes to pilgrimage to purify his heart. You know, who is Vidura? Vidura is Yamaraj, who is, you know, who has come here. He lived very pure and very simple life. He is a great devotee of the Lord. He is such a great devotee that Bhagavan himself, Lord Krishna himself, before leaving this world, he remembered about Vidura. He didn't remember about, you know, my not so humble self or anyone else sitting in this class. He didn't ask, how is, you know, Bhakti in such and such. You know, please, dear Maitreya, meet with such Bhakti and explain to her the truth about this material world. He said, dear Maitreya, please meet with Vidura and talk with him and explain very important truths to him. So that's Vidura. And Sukadeva Goswami says, Vidura goes on pilgrimage and meditates intensely on the Supreme Lord to purify his heart, you know. Does he need purification? Yes, he does. And Vidura himself says, because I lived for too long with these people, because I had this bad association, I need some purification. That's a very important point, again, of this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, the whole design of Srimad Bhagavatam. We need purification. Too much, for too long, much too much, for much too long, we have been associating with this material world, and we developed so many unwanted desires, so many unwanted attachments. So if we're really sincere, at one point we have to just leave everything behind and go and say, I need to understand the Supreme Lord. It's like, you know, recently I was listening the life story of Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And, you know, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, at one point, you know, he just left everything. He said, I cannot stay anymore. You know, again, he is very pure, but he went to pilgrimage. That's the Vedic custom. You know, at one point, we have to understand that there is nothing more important than to understand the Supreme Lord. Yes, we are preparing now for this point to do it in a very natural way, but at one point we will have to do it. So that's the very instructive beginning story. And this pilgrimage of Vidura, in a way, symbolic, because this is the starting point for our pilgrimage through the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the same way as Vidura goes from holy place to holy place, from one tirtha to another tirtha, and meditates on different forms of the Supreme Lord, looking in different places, because in different holy places, different forms of Supreme Lord reside. In the same way, we should enter into this pilgrimage through the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam and meditate on the Supreme Lord intensely for the internal purification, and in this way ultimately achieve the Supreme Lord in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the journey, and therefore the Srimad Bhagavatam starts with this symbolic journey or symbolic pilgrimage of Vidura. Vidura Vidura, of course, then meets in Vrindavan on the bank of Yamuna river, Uddhava. There is still this place in Vrindavan which is called Gyana Gudri, where the meeting of Vidura and Uddhava took place. And Uddhava starts telling him about the Lord, crying. So emotional was Vidura and Maitreya and Uddhava. They're both crying, and if they would stay there would not be Srimad Bhagavatam. So at one point they had to stop crying. And Uddhava went to Badarikashram to preach there, and Vidura went to Haridwar to meet with Maitreya and to become the recipient of his mercy. And also Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he was in this state of samadhi, but then at one point he started preaching. A very important point for us followers of Srila Prabhupada. Yes, bhajan is very important, but preaching is not less important, because in this way we can purify ourselves and we can also get the grace and mercy of the Supreme Lord. So, this ultimately Vidura meets with Maitreya in Haridwar on the bank of Ganga, in this very holy place, on the bank of the most holiest of all rivers in the whole Bharatavarsha. And for a long time, Vidura was meditating, because Uddhava told him that specifically you should meet with Maitreya and you should ask Maitreya all these questions which are there in your mind, in your heart. And after a long time, after this long pilgrimage, Vidura ultimately comes to the bank of Ganga and meets with Maitreya. And what he asks, Prabhupada himself is surprised. Why is he asking this question? Why he is not asking him, please tell me the pastimes of the Lord, please tell me about the Lord's form, about Lord's name. Why is he asking this question? This question with which we start our talk, and with which Vidura starts his speech. Sukhaya karmani karoti loko natai sukham va anyat uparamam va vindeta bhuyas tata eva dukham yadatra yuktam Bhagavan vaden naha. O Bhagavan, O great personality, or greatest of all devotees of the Lord, who was privileged to be present at the moment when the Lord was departing this world. The last one, besides Uddhava, who saw the Lord in this earth, he tells him, Bhagavan, tell me why people are suffering in this world, even though everyone is endeavoring, is trying his best to achieve happiness. And why nobody achieves happiness, and why, on the contrary, everyone is suffering? It's a very interesting question. He says, everyone is trying, sukhaya karmani karoti lokaha. People in this world, they're trying hard to become happy. Is it true? We're all trying to become happy. And he says, natai sukham. Vanyatu paramamba. They're not getting happiness. They're not stopping the sufferings. And instead, they're becoming more and more morose. The more and more unhappiness is coming. And nobody thinks why it is happening. There is nothing more consistent in this world than consistent failure to achieve happiness. And nobody tries to think about it. Everyone is thinking, yeah, right. It didn't work this time. It will work next time. First marriage, second marriage, third marriage, 10th marriage, whatever. Hope dies the last. And It's just, somebody said that the second marriage or the third marriage, it's the victory of the hope over common sense or something like this. When the hope, the idea to become happy completely overpowers you. And you cannot really relate to the reality. You cannot really understand what's going on. So, and Prabhupada, he asked this question in the beginning of the purport, why Vidura asks this question. And the answer, we have to understand very clearly the answer, why Vidura asks this question. First of all, it's a proper etiquette. Srila Prabhupada says, because of his natural humility, he is not asking for something which he would like to hear or he would like to enjoy. He's asking the question for the common benefit, but it also, Vidura is showing a very great example. He doesn't ask immediately the questions about some confidential subject matters. And actually, it's not an etiquette to ask the questions about the confidential subject matter. The natural humility of the disciple is to wait when Guru sees that you are really fit to understand these confidential subject matters. You cannot really say, I deserve the right to hear this. Tell me. It's not that cheap. And also, another meaning of this is that Vidura knows very well that before clearly understanding the answer to this question, one will not be able to understand the answer to the confidential questions which he has. Please do listen very carefully. First, and that's the meaning of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. First, we have to become frustrated in our hopes to gain happiness by understanding properly the design of this world. We first have to understand very deeply that it's hopeless to hope that we will become happy. It's even hopeless to hope. It's such a hopeless hope that there is no use. Before we understand this, what will happen? We will listen the pastimes of the Lord, and we will always calculate. Yes, that's nice. That's when I retire, I will listen about this carefully. Yes, Srimad Bhagavatam. I have all the volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam on my shelf. And so far, they were not running from the shelves. So maybe when I retire, then I will be able to absorb myself into this nice, really nice subject matter. I know it's nice, but I have no time now because I have to become happy somehow or other. Otherwise, what will happen with my life? So you will never have time for this unless you understand very carefully the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore, Vidura asks this sobering question. And he knows the answer to this question. He definitely knows the answer to this question. But he's asking for our benefit and also manifesting natural humility, like Sanatana Goswami. He's asking the Supreme Lord, Lord Chaitanya himself, I don't know who I am. Tell me who I am. And this is actually what also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains. He says that again and again and again, in the commentary to this, one of these verses of the 5th chapter of the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, again and again and again, we have to hear about who we are. Because we will not be able to take shelter of the Supreme Lord in real sense before we understand this in real sense, because now our understanding is theoretical. Yes, I accept this. I'm not this body. Yes, I'm not this body. Who is for it? unanimous. No problem. Everyone is for it. Nobody is against. Maybe somebody abstained. Not decided, not exactly sure. But most of the people, we read Bhagavad Gita, we accept this. I'm not this body. Yes, we accept this. But do we really know this? No. This Maya is very deep. And therefore, again and again and again, we have to hear about this Maya, the nature of this Maya. And at one point, some understanding, some proper understanding will come. And when this proper understanding will come, then, we will be absorbed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Nothing will be able to distract us from Srimad Bhagavatam. As soon as this miracle happened within our heart, nothing will be able to distract us from the holy name, because we will understand that's the shelter. Because now we're trying, I'm confessing to you, I'm explaining, I don't want to offend you. Most probably you are all, elevated Paramahamsas, and you don't need to hear this again and again and again. But what we're trying to do, we always try to take shelter in this body. Prabhupada gives this very beautiful song. I created this. Why Prabhupada says this? Because people are trying to take shelter in something which is not worthy of taking shelter of. They're building this house. What happened with the house? This is the house of luck. It will be burned. There will be a big pile of ashes. Maybe even not so big. And we're trying to take shelter of something else. So the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is preparing us to take shelter of Krishna Katha, which is there in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and which is here in the beginning of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, so that we could take complete shelter of them. Fully absorbed, nothing else. No other thoughts or no other ideas. So this is how it starts, and in this fifth, and therefore this hopeless, and really this is a very scientific question. If we analyze our life, we tried our best to become happy. I definitely tried my best. I even became a devotee to become happy. Didn't work. I mean to say, with the wrong approach. Ultimately, of course, that's the way to become happy. But when we try to become happy ourselves, independently on the Lord, when we try to become happy by some material means, by some manipulation with material nature, then it will fail. So, in this very fifth chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Maitreya already begins describing, and he will give a very beautiful description, the second description in Srimad Bhagavatam of Sankhya philosophy. And what is the whole idea of Sankhya philosophy? Which will be, as I already said, repeated several times, starting from the second canto and several times in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is to free us, please listen again very carefully, is to free us from the illusion that we can, by the means of exploiting material nature, we can become happy. So what Shukadev Goswami, through the mouth of Maitreya Muni, is describing to us is that material nature is not independent, and because she is not independent, she is not exploitable. So, very simple example, very common example. In this material world, men, unscrupulous men, are trying to exploit women. And who is the most vulnerable? which women are most vulnerable to be exploited? Those women who are independent, so to speak, independent. Especially in the modern world, especially in the Western world, in the Western countries, the women, all this, as Prabhupada was, really revealing this plot, the men, they started this woman liberation movement. For which purpose? To give women the illusion of independence. For which purpose? So that they could exploit them in a better way. This is how it works. So, but please listen. If the woman is independent, she is exploitable. But if the woman has a protector, powerful protector, and she is totally dependent on him, can you exploit such a woman? No way. You will not be able to exploit such a woman. So what this description of the creation of the Sarga is all about, it's that this Prakriti, which is feminine by nature, is not independent. And because Prakriti is not independent, she has a protector. She has the Supreme Lord who is behind her, who is protecting her from being exploited, and who is actually, all our attempts to exploit her, he turns into our misfortune. He turns it totally into our misfortune. So when people look at this material world and see the material energy, which by design, created by the Lord to make an impression of independence, like scientists, they study this material nature and they say there is no need for God. We can explain everything without God. Of course, we cannot explain how it all came into being, but everything else after that we can explain. So that's the laws of nature. There are laws of nature. They, study the laws of nature. They say everything is according to cause and effect, and we all know this, and therefore we can become happy in this world. Please, again, try to understand this point. For those people who want to enjoy in this world, Krishna has created the illusion that this material nature is independent. You don't see God by looking in the material nature. You see all these nice things and, something which really reinforces the spirit of enjoyment within you. You go and you smell some flowers. Oh, so nice. And then you see something which is very tasty, and all these things are there. And God created it in such a way that it seems to be exploitable. It seems to be easily exploitable. And those foolish living entities who believe it, who really take it for granted, they try to do it, but because in reality she is not independent, all their attempts to become happy by this means fail. And that's exactly the answer to the question of Vidura. And that's exactly why the answer to this question constitutes the whole third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The whole idea of science. What is the idea of science? Bhakti Vijnana Maharaj said that some of you have PhDs. So I also have a misfortune to have this degree. So what is the idea of science? The idea of science is that, yes, we will manipulate this science and, and we will provide you with all the facilities to enjoy. This nature is nice, but it's not really perfect. So, the the pinnacle of evolution is our scientific brain, and by our scientific brain we make it better. We will get rid of all diseases, we will get rid of old age, and ultimately we will conquer death, and you will be just unlimitedly happy, Kijai. So, yes, and people believe it. And therefore, that's the religion of the modern society. And therefore, Sankhya philosophy, Nirishvara Sankhya philosophy, which is defeated in this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, was so popular. And therefore, yoga is so popular. What is yoga? Yoga just, we will teach you how to become immortal. Just try hard. Just don't breathe for as long as possible. It will work, Just by some manipulation, by this manipulation or that manipulation, you become happy. So, but if you are intelligent and if you read this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, you will make a discovery. Oh, behind this innocent woman, which I wanted to enjoy and which I wanted to exploit, there is a powerful guardian. She is protected. And therefore I suffered. I suffered the consequences of my illegal attempts to enjoy something which is not mine. This material energy is not mine, it belongs to God. It's a very sobering and it's a bad news actually. It's really bad news. I thought it's for me, but it belongs to Him. He created this world. He created this beautiful design behind this. And therefore I cannot enjoy, I have to serve. I have to manifest my other propensity, which is also there. And actually, when people start serving, they will become happy. When they unnaturally try to enjoy the material nature, they lose all the chances for happiness. So that's basically what is going on, starting from the 5th chapter of the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where this Sarga, elementary creation, and then Visarga later on in this canto is being described. Sarga and Visarga are main topics of this 3rd canto. Technically speaking, it's Sarga, but in reality, both Sarga and Visarga, I explained that the creation and to impress upon us the hopeless attempts to enjoy the material nature by illegal means and explain to us how to relate with this material nature properly, the two beautiful stories in the 3rd canto are being described. Of course, before that, before we come to these stories, there is also a very interesting and very instructive and revealing story about Lord Brahma, who appeared on the lotus flower, and he couldn't understand what's going on, and he wanted to understand the nature by his own empirical attempts. He was diving deep into this Garbhodaka ocean, and he was trying to find the origin. This is the futile attempts of the science or scientists who are trying to discover the origin of life and origin of everything. So in the beginning, from the very beginning, Maitreya is describing this story, and he says, Brahma, he has 4 heads. You may have 4 PhDs, but it's not as much as 4 heads of Lord Brahma. He's much more intelligent than you, much more intelligent. Still, he couldn't understand the Lord by empirical means. You will make a mess If you try to understand the Lord by empirical means, you will be frustrated. So please become frustrated as soon as possible as Lord Brahma and try to understand the Lord by other means. This third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam gives the key how to understand the Lord by meditation. Lord Brahma was sitting there and he heard these two syllables, tapa, and tapa means concentrate your mind, meditate. And by the means of meditation, the knowledge will be revealed to you. After long meditation, Lord Brahma actually started praying to the Supreme Lord. It's also a very important lesson that we can really sincerely start praying to the Lord after long meditation. When we purify our heart and our consciousness with the meditation on the Lord. By meditating on the Lord, we really understand who He is and who I am. This is what happened with Lord Brahma. Initially, he was proud. He was in this condition, initial condition, as every one of us, of ignorance. But then ultimately he became very humble. He purified himself and he started praying, please, 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 reveal to me this knowledge and give me the energy to create something. So, since we don't have too much time, I will go to some other important points. I am not describing very in much details the events of the third canto. I'm trying to give the main idea of the third canto. So after explaining how the Supreme Lord is behind this material creation, how He takes shape of the time, again and again and again, it is repeated in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that the will of the Lord and the energy of the Lord manifest in this material world as the power of time, as the power of time. And what is time? Eternal time. Eternal time is something which puts end to everything. So from the very beginning, we have to understand this simple thing. My life will end. My enjoyment will end by the inevitable will of the Lord. In the meantime, I have to use this time to serve Him. So while explaining the nature of the time, that's one of the very important topics of the whole third canto, because the time is this power, how Lord's will being established in this world. Sometimes the time is called Daiva, providence. People go to Daiva Gya, to astrologer, and they say, astrologer, please tell us what to do. But ultimately, we have to understand God is behind this. That's the main teaching of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. God is there. Everything is happening according to His will. His will is benevolent. He wants our release from our illusions, and even sufferings which we undergo, and whatever lack is there is just to give us ultimate happiness and eternal life. We have to respect this power of time which creates everything. So that's there. But then, after describing the secondary creation, how Lord Brahma created different living entities, different creatures of different forms and shapes, and ultimately human beings, all the birds and aquatics and animals and everything. And then he describes about Kumaras. And before that he described how Lord Brahma initially created 5 coverings of ignorance, Tamishra, Anda Tamishra, Moha, Maha Moha, and Tamaha. This 5 5 coverings of ignorance in this universe. He's explaining everything for us to understand how this material world works and how it's hopeless to try to enjoy. It's better to be in this proper place. But because Shukadev Goswami and Maitreya Muni himself knows that we will not be able to understand philosophy, and I believe that you're already bored with my, too much philosophical explanation, to give some relief after 1.5 hours of explaining this stuff, Shukadev Goswami finally comes to the story. But the point of this story is the same. He starts telling the story of appearance of Lord Varaha and appearance of the great demon of Hiranyaksha. So he explained the futile attempts to become happy in this world by the means of philosophy, by the means of explaining the structure and the nature of this world. But because he realizes that we will not be able to understand this, he says, okay, let's hear the story. It's a nice story. Once upon a time, there was a big demon called Hiranyaksha. And what does Hiranyaksha means? Hiranya means gold, and Aksha means ice. So it basically means, it's like in this Disney cartoon, there was this hero, and he had the dollar in his eyes, the sign of the dollar in the eyes. So Hiranyaksha is this guy. He always sees gold. Hiranyaksha. It's not that, he had beautiful golden eyes. No. His eyes are there to see gold. Does it sound familiar to you? When you look at this world and you want to find gold, you want to find the wealth, you want to find enjoyment, basically Hiranyaksha is greed personified. And why Hiranyaksha is one of the main heroes or anti-heroes of protagonists of this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, because third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam describes Sarga. And Sarga means elementary creation. And as I said, elementary creation means also creation of our human body. And what is the natural instinct which every one of us has when we are born? There is very natural instinct. It's called, how to say this, grabbing instinct. The little baby, when he crawls, what he does, he just grabs everything and then puts it in the mouth. It doesn't matter whatever it is. It may be, it may be a frog or whatever. He puts everything in the mouth. So that's greed. We are born with greed. Our initial creation, I remember very much when I was a child, it was very difficult for me to give something to my little younger sister. I didn't want to give, why should I give to her? So that's the initial creation, the initial problem, the initial anartha. Everyone is born in this material world with this desire to enjoy this material world, with this desire with this greed, I need more and more and more and more and more of this stuff by which I will enjoy. So what will happen in this story, you of course know this story and I will not explain to you. First of all, it is explained how Hiranyaksha appeared in this world. That's also very significant to understand the message, the main message of this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. How Hiranyaksha appeared in this world, this whole beautiful story of deity becoming very romantic, Of course, proper Hare Krishna would tell lusty. But she became very romantic. It was a dusk, and she became romantic. She she wanted to have some fun with Kashyapa Muni. Her legal husband, it's not just some illicit, gross illicit sex story, but nevertheless, even though it was quite licit, still it was illicit because the motivation behind it was not proper. This initial motivation, I want to enjoy. And therefore she approached her husband in an improper way, and even though her husband wanted somehow rather to reason her and to tell her, please don't do it, nothing good will happen because this is not a proper time. Again, time is there. What is time? Time establishes the rule. Time is the will of the Lord. And the will of the Lord establishes the rules which we have to follow. And primarily, when we see the rules which are there in the Vedic scripture, many of these rules is according to the time. You should not eat in the dusk, for example. You should not eat certain items in this month of monsoon. You should not eat on Ekadashi day, 11th day of the zodiac. You should eat at this time. You should do this at this time of the day. So time gives you the rules. And rules is the will of the Lord. If you follow properly the will of the Lord, everything will be, you will become happy in this world. That's the idea. But if you rebel against it, if you do it improperly, not according to the establishment of the Lord, not according to the proper time, because a lot of Vedic rules and regulations is actually, that's the whole Jyotish is all about, what to do in this particular time. Like, for example, you should not, Ayurveda says, take your oil bath every day. It's very beneficial. But then Jyotish says, no. On Shashti, you cannot do this. You can do it, you cannot do it on Ekadashi. You cannot do it on Shashti. On other days, you can do it. So that's again, the will of the Lord manifests through the time. And we see in this story of Diti and Kashyapa Muni, how she approaches him improperly, whimsically. She just wants to, she's romantic, she's emotional. She wants to enjoy. And he says, no, nothing good will happen. And she says, no. How something bad can happen? Because, I love you. I love you. And he says, okay. Let us see. So this big demon appears. And again, taking it back, it's not that Hiranyaksha appeared some, millions of years ago and that's it. Little Hiranyaksha lives within our heart. Maybe somebody will get a very beautiful name during initiation ceremony, Hiranyaksha Das. Or Hiranyakshi Devi Dasi. So, because we all, we have something in common. He was one of our forefathers. So this whole story is there in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and Varahadev appears. And Varahadev appears as an independent hero, coming from the nostril of Lord Brahma in a very humorous way. Only the Lord can come from the nostril, The Lord Brahma sneezed, and when we sneeze, nothing good comes out. When Lord Brahma sneezed, little Varaha appeared from his nose. But what is very interesting, how the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is explaining who is Varahadev. Varahadev is the real hero of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because Varahadev is the manifestation of the Vedic sacrifice. It is explained in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that all the parts of his body are related with the signs of sacrifice. So what it means in reality, what is the message or teachings of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam? Yes, we do have this natural tendency or propensity to enjoy in this world. And we try to do it in illegal way, in illicit way, by scientific ways. And we know that the science, by giving us some facilities to enjoy, actually creates the mess. The scientists, they're the biggest culprits in this world. They destroyed everything. This scientific mentality is actually a very destructive mentality, because they want to somehow or other circumvent the laws, the basic law of material nature, that the material nature is not independent. But you can enjoy. The good message of this canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is that there is Vedic sacrifice. And Vedic sacrifice is the means how you should live in this world, how you should relate to this material energy, how we can engage this material energy into the service to the Supreme Lord. The answer is simple: yagya. Yagya is the means to employ the material energy in the service of the Lord according to the will of the Lord. That's the design of this world. The Lord has created this world where you can enjoy, but by interacting with the material nature, by doing yagya. You do yagya, you will have, all the facilities which you want. You will have abundance of everything. You will have proper weather. You will not suffer from severe cold or severe heat. The rains will come. So that's the real meaning of this clash between Hiranyaksha and Hiranyaksha and Varahadev. Hiranyaksha is the spirit of unbridled, uncontrolled enjoyment over this material nature. And Varahadev comes to kill this spirit and to teach how to live happily in this material world by performing properly yagya. So that's one story, very important story, which teaches the same lesson, but by the means of story, by the means of this story of the clash, of the appearance of Hiranyaksha, how to live improperly in this world and and ultimately suffer, even though you may be very powerful. You may be very powerful, and nobody is as powerful as Hiranyaksha. Still, you will not be able to enjoy. But if you want to really live properly without disturbing this material nature, so what happens when people are trying to exploit material nature? They disturb. Human beings are the most disturbing creatures in this world. They're just total disturbance, nonsense. But Vedic culture teaches, and the Srimad Bhagavatam teaches us how to live peacefully in this world. And for that, there is yagya. Means, do this, do sacrifice, be grateful, always, say thank you to the Lord, by all means, by the proper means of rituals, by other stuff. Like little children, when we teach little children to behave properly, what do? We say to them, you say thank you, you say please. We teach them very basic etiquette. And little children, they don't really understand the meaning behind this etiquette, but they do it, and ultimately, little by little, they become gentle. They become more controlled. In the same way, in the beginning, they do it as a ritual. The parents tell them, we will give you something, but you first say thank you, or you first say please, or whatever. You behave properly. So in the same way, Vedic culture, in the beginning, the initial teachings of Vedic culture is that just do the ritual, even though you may not understand the meaning behind this ritual. You may not understand, you may not really put your heart into this please or thank you, but you still nevertheless tell these little words, and then you will be surprised how much you will get in return. So that's what Varahadev is teaching us. Just behave gently, do everything according to the will of the Lord, limit. By the will of the Lord, you will have to have limited interaction with this world, but this limited interaction with this world will be very satisfying to you. But if you try to increase this interaction with this world unlimitedly, what will happen? Tamas will come into your world, into your mind. Because the objects of the senses are tamasic by nature. And by contacting these objects of the senses, you get the tamas. Anyway, so I'll have to say a few more words to finish the whole thing. So the next story in this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is Kapila Dev's story. And before Kapila Dev, we see Devahuti and Kardama Muni. And that's exactly the opposite story of Kashyapa and Diti. Kashyapa and Diti, she wanted to enjoy, and ultimately she suffered because of the death of her little Hiranyaksha, little demon Hiranyaksha. And Devahuti also wanted to enjoy. It's very clearly said there. She wanted to enjoy, and she enjoyed much more than Diti. Devahuti had her castle, the whole beautiful castle, flying castle was created by Kardama Muni to her, and he created 9 replicas of himself. And he did everything, but how? Why? Because she first served. In the beginning, she served so nicely without expecting anything, and then as a result of this service, everything came to her. That's the teachings of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. You may live in this world and suffer by trying to enjoy this world illegally. Or you may live in this world and get proper enjoyment which will not actually contaminate you, and as a result you will get the Supreme Lord. Lord Kapila Dev appeared to Devahuti as a result of your service attitude. So instead of increasing your enjoying spirit, Bhogavriti, we should try to increase our Sevavriti, the service spirit, service attitude. That's the proper way. And that's the way to relate with this material nature. And then from this Sevavriti, from this spirit of service, which is the very foundation of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, if we established in this Sevavriti, and if we understand how Sevavriti gives you enjoyment, gives you joy, gives you everything which you require, if we understand this, then we understood how to live in this material world without being entangled in this material world. And therefore this question of Vidura is so important, because the whole third canto is in reality the answer to this question. And these two stories, these two central stories of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, answering very nicely this question. Why people are suffering, why people trying to get happy, not getting happiness, getting miseries as a result. And then later also Vidura will ask second question. He will ask, how people can become happy. So the third canto is explaining this, how to deal properly with the material nature, understanding that the material nature is not independent, that it is the energy of the Lord, that the Lord is behind it. So how to, with utmost reverence, use this material nature and at the same time get what we need, satisfy our emotional needs, and progress further in our journey towards the Lord. So that's in a very short way, the message of the third canto. I didn't get into the details of the plot, but that you can easily do yourself. I wanted to explain the central message, which may be not so obvious when we read it and when we forget what was there before. But the very central chapter of this canto is the fifth chapter of the third canto, very essential. And then, of course, 25th chapter, where Lord Kapila Dev explains the devotional service. Fifth canto explains in a very beautiful way the creation of this world, and the 25th chapter is explaining how to live in this world properly and how to understand that the Lord is behind this material nature, and how to relate with the Lord by the means of, through the media of material nature. So that's it.
Thank you very, very much, Maharaj, for the wonderful, brilliant analysis and a very penetrating overview. I'm sure that we did get to see, like you say, you lose the woods between the trees.
Yeah.
There's an expression, something like that. When we get down to studying each one of the verses and everything, they miss the overview. So you brought in a very amazing understanding and overview of the canto, which I appreciate very, very much. Some very penetrating points. Especially I liked your point about, just to mention about Prakriti is not independent. You can't enjoy. Just like enjoying independent women and promoting women's liberation. I thought that was a very stunning example. It's very, very practical. It's derived from Prabhupada's saying. And you cannot enjoy Prakriti, although she's very inviting.
Yes.
Inviting you to enjoy, and then you get stuck in the web. Like a fly in the web. You get stuck in the web, and you're made to learn some very important lessons. You can't avoid learning lessons inside Prakriti. Thank you very much for that. I want to open up for asking any questions if you have for Maharaj. I want to specifically start off by asking, I have two questions, but I'll ask one question specifically is that Prabhupada makes an amazing comment about Maitreya Muni. He says he's not a pure devotee in the purport. He diminishes Maitreya Muni at one point. And it's amazing that the arrangement is that Uddhava is telling Vidura to go and get information from Maitreya. And like you mentioned, Vidura is already Yamaraj. He's one of the Mahajanas. There is nothing that he would not know. But still it's a Leela and things are going on. we may accommodate that. But then still it's a question in the mind as to how Maitreya becomes the instructor of Vidura. It seems like Vidura is far, far more advanced than Maitreya from that comment of Prabhupada. And from the way that Prabhupada comments that Krishna with Uddhava and Maitreya together, then he says that Krishna is paying more attention to Uddhava and not really listening or looking at Maitreya much. So taking all these comments together, I was wondering how it came out that Maitreya would instruct Vidura.
2 points one can make easily. One point is made here. It was the proper etiquette. Maitreya was more senior by age, and therefore Uddhava, he avoided giving instruction in the presence of Maitreya. And it's a proper etiquette. If somebody is more senior, we should not give the instruction. That's the formal answer. But another answer to this question, very important for us to understand, would be that the most important thing which we as neophyte devotees have to learn is that we should develop this attitude of Shishya attitude, the mood of Shishya Bhav. And when we have this desire to learn and to be instructed, then we will be able to gain benefit from the instructions of even people who are supposedly less advanced than us. When we say that I will only take instructions of a pure devotee Paramahamsa, Rasika Vaishnava, and there is no Rasika Vaishnavas around, therefore I have to go somewhere else, that's a pride. Vidura is humbly taking instructions, and he's sure, he's not pretending. He's learning a lot from Maitreya because he likes to learn, he likes to study, and he likes to hear about the Lord, when somebody is speaking about the Lord. So it's an important lesson for us. We have to learn, Prabhupada said that you have to learn from, you have to take the gold from the dirty place, you have to learn from even illiterate people, and quoting Chanakya Pandit, and Prabhupada himself sometimes said, to his disciples, "You are my gurus. I am learning from you." And he was sitting in the class. It's just unbelievable. We usually only visit our own lectures, and only because it's very difficult to not visit our own lectures. But Prabhupada was very humbly sitting and listening his very neophyte disciples, and smiling, and was very happy. So, and they probably were not so pure devotees, but Prabhupada were listening to them. Or to speak about Maitreya, who listened, who heard the Supreme Lord. So Vidura was happy to hear. It's actually one of the teachings of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's more important to learn how to listen than to learn how to speak. Listening of Srimad Bhagavatam is more important with the proper attitude, even if therefore Prabhupada, sometimes people say, Prabhupada established this system that even neophyte devotees that sit somewhere on Vyasasan and they start speaking something, what is the point? It is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that you should learn Srimad Bhagavatam from Rasika Vaishnava. What is the point of learning Srimad Bhagavatam from some bhakta. But no, if you listen with the proper attitude, you will get benefit. You will get benefit. Krishna will be pleased by your attitude, and he, through the mouth of this Vaishnava, he may be neophyte, but Krishna will reveal to you, amazing things through the mouth of this Vaishnava. So it's a question of our attitude. If we listen Srimad Bhagavatam as Vidura was listening, and Vidura didn't say, Vidura said, when he was asking this question, he said, please explain to me the essence of Lord's Leela. Later on, he will ask this question. And Maitreya starts speaking about this, and Vidura didn't say, you're not Rasik. I am not. I will go to some other place to listen to somebody else. You're not explaining what you're supposed to explain to me.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. Anybody else has a question? Any question?
Maharaj, Manasri Maharaj, I have a question. We have spoken about Lord in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam also. In spite of that, what is the need of Sankhya philosophy, Maharaj? Will it won't misdirect people towards yoga system or not?
Sankhya, which Sankhya? Sankhya which is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, or Sankhya Sankhya in Srimad Bhagavatam?
Yeah.
To defeat the use, I will explain it again. I already explained, but I will explain it again. Because we all have this insight, anartha, that what is Sankhya? Sankhya is scientific mentality. People think that if they will understand the subtle creation of this world, how this world is composed, they will be able to manipulate it. And in this way, they will become happy. They will create vaccine from COVID, and everything will become back to normal, or whatever else is there. And we all hope. Even devotees hope, yes, very soon science will help me to become happy. So to dismantle this misconception, this Seshvara Sankhya is being described in Srimad Bhagavatam, and to explain that no matter how much you try, this world is not a happy place by design, not by mistake. Because people sometimes think that, this is the place which needs to be a little improved, and, it's generally nice, but there are little mistakes by Creator. And if we, this is some engineering mistakes, like some bugs are there. Like when the computer engineer, creates some program, there's some better version of the program. And then you run this, and you find this bug and this bug and this bug. So they think, he tried his best, but now we're running this, so we will find all these bugs, fix them, and it will be nice. The scientists will make us happy. This hope is there. I don't know about you, probably. You're free from it, but I'm very hopeful. So therefore the Sankhya says, no, it's not by mistake, it's by design. This world is created in a certain way by design, and you have to know the design. And if you know the design, you will understand just 2 minutes I will take, because I didn't explain the details of the Sankhya philosophy. What is the main point of Sankhya philosophy? The main point of Sankhya philosophy for us to understand how our psychology works. That according to Sankhya philosophy described in Srimad Bhagavatam, our antahkarana or internal sense organ has 4 constituents: chitta, buddhi, manas, and ahankara. And Srimad Bhagavatam, especially in this 3rd canto, very beautifully describes how they are interrelated with each other. So that's on a cosmic plane of creation. If we take ourselves, this whole thing is there. Chitta is a very pure thing. It's initial consciousness, original consciousness, which is not contaminated. And it is very importantly said in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that this original consciousness, which is there in every living entity, is capable of reflecting the Lord because of its transparent nature. So when our chitta is cleansed, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam, by chanting the holy name, then at one point the image of the Lord, his form, his qualities, guna, and ultimately his lila will come to our mind on their own. We don't need to do anything artificial for this, because that's the quality of our mind, of our chitta. It can reflect all these things when it's clean, but first it has to be clean. It has to be very transparent, svachhatvam. It is specifically said in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that original quality of chitta is svachhatvam, it's clean. So, it doesn't have modes of material nature, lower modes of material nature. It doesn't have all this stuff. So, how to clean this chitta and why this chitta becomes contaminated? This chitta becomes contaminated according to the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam philosophy of Maitreya Muni and Kapila Dev because of ahankar, of false ego. Ahankar is tamasic. So this tamasic ahankar occupies our occupies our chitta and contaminates chitta with the black spots of material enjoyment. How this tamas is entering into our chitta through ahankar because of the buddhi and manas. Manas connected with the senses, being contaminated by contact with the senses, becomes the conductor of this tamasic and rajasic energy which are there, or tamasic energy which are there in the sense objects. So how to clean it? With the means of buddhi. Buddhi intelligence has to regulate the contact of the mind with the senses according to the scriptures. So if we regulate this initial contact of the mind with the senses, which is very pleasurable, by the means of purified buddhi, and buddhi is connected with the higher buddhi of the Lord, or the intelligence of the scriptures, if buddhi is very clean, then gradually, ahankara, false ego, becomes less strong, becomes weakened. And this weakened ahankar, ultimately will vanish, and our original pure consciousness will reveal to us the Lord. So what do? We sit down in the morning and we chant Hare Krishna. How we chant Hare Krishna? Without contacting anything else. It's not that we chant Hare Krishna in front of YouTube and we do something which is, spiritually benefiting, and at the same time not a bad thing, to know some news or whatever. No. You will never clean your chitta by this YouTube japa. No way, not possible. You have to really be very careful, understanding how the contamination is coming to your chitta, and what is the nature of original consciousness, that it's pure, that it's very peaceful, and it's very shantatvam, and vikaradi, vikara rahitam. It's not really transformed, that there is this original consciousness which we strive by this means of japa meditation. So if we understand this is for us. This is a very important teachings for us, to understand how our mind works, how our internal organ, sense organ, interacts with this world, and why we cannot really purify it if we don't follow properly the scriptures.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. Ishwara Shakti, Devinasi, and then Kannan, and then Kavita.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Maharaj, in the Kapila Shiksha, one of the pure devotees' qualities, Prabhupada is mentioning, even the Bhagavatam is mentioning, that they don't even want the cessation of birth and death. Their only motive is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to serve Him. But in many cases, throughout the purpose, Prabhupada is advising us to, finish this material entanglement. Go back home, go back to Godhead. So even desiring going back to Godhead is a desire, and it is not a symptom of pure devotion. Like how to understand these two situations, Maharaj?
Desire for liberation is very strong, and especially for those people who suffered in this material world, and to give them some impetus or some inspiration, sometimes we employ this slogan, back home, back to Godhead. But in reality, it's like, you want to induce your little child to take some bitter medicine, and you give him some little candy and say, take this candy and this bitter medicine. If from the very beginning we would say, no, bhakti, no liberation, just stay here and it doesn't matter, it's not something which is very palatable in the beginning. Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam vajagadisha kamaya, this verse is there, but it's the fourth verse. It's not the first verse. In the first verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Bhava Malha Davagni Nirvapanam, which means cessation of all material sufferings. And then he says, no problem. I'm ready to be born again and again and again, even here. So that's this high understanding, you cannot relate to it in the beginning. In the beginning, we need to understand that bhakti is a very powerful means to achieve liberation because we want it. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Karan. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandatanam Maharaj, thank you very much, Maharaj. Maharaj, you have mentioned that this material world is not independent, always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we cannot exploit her because it seems to be exploitable, something like that you have mentioned, Maharaj, but we can see a lot of things are happening around us, a lot of natures are getting disturbed by man-made disasters, fertilizers are getting lifting, global warming. What kind of things are there, Maharaj? How to understand these kind of happening?
Can you repeat how to understand what?
How to understand, but you mentioned it seems to be exploitable. But we are seeing that material world is getting exploitable every day.
Yes, they're getting, yes, but there is a price attached to it. So, yes, people do this mistake. They try to exploit this material world, but the result is suffering. Instead of increasing enjoyment, they're suffering more and more and more, and this material world becomes the hellish place to teach us the lesson. And hopefully sometime people will understand that these attempts are not really good. You can be happy if you live, if you interact with this material nature in a proper way. Like India was the richest country in the world. That's why all these Western people, they wanted to possess India. But why India was such wealthy place? Because of the spiritual knowledge. Because the spiritual knowledge taught people how to live in this world and be happy in this world. So that's the lesson. All this global warming and everything is just signs from the nature that you're doing something wrong. And some people, they start understanding something, that we need to change our attitude. So, yeah, the point of exploitation is that you exploit and then you enjoy. But people, they exploit and then they suffer. So...
Yes, Kavita, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavad Pranams Maharaj. Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful session, Maharaj. Today only I understood the real meaning of illicit enjoyment. Our Maharaj used to say often, per day, every day used to use that word, you are enjoying illegally, and for that so many people are helping that illegal arrangement. Today only I understood the actual meaning, Maharaj, that Prakriti is a woman and we are all acting like a Purusha and we are trying to exploit her and she's protected by the Lord. My question is, Maharaj, in the third canto, Maitreya Muni is addressed, one or two shloka is addressed as Bhagavan, Maharaj, and elsewhere Brahma is also addressed as Bhagavan. But we learn from Srila Prabhupada's purport that Bhagavan is a word used for someone who has all six opulences in full, and that can be used only for Krishna. That is what Srila Prabhupada explained, Bhagavad Gita purport, I read it, Maharaj. And elsewhere, even Shiva is referred as Bhagavan. How to understand why that particular Bhagavan word, which can be used for Krishna alone, is used for Maitreya Muni even, and he is referred to as he is not even a pure devotee. So, how to understand all these things, Maharaj?
It's the way to express respect to somebody, and the way to express one's dependence on somebody. When we very respectfully say, we sometimes may exaggerate his position. And basically Bhagavan, when Vidura calls Maitreya Muni Bhagavan, he means that he possesses opulence of spiritual knowledge, and he is relating to this Bhaga of Maitreya Muni. He is basically asking him, please give me or share with me this opulence which you have, opulence of your knowledge. Bhagavan, technically speaking, it's only, proper to call the Supreme Lord because he has all the opulence in full. But, in one sense, we're all little Bhagavans because we have little opulences. Somebody has 500 rupees, so he's also Bhagavan. 500 rupees worth Bhagavan. But he basically, the implication is that share with me this opulence which you have.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
What is the Sakti?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavad Pranams. Very nice to hear from you, and we should thank our Maharaj, Continuous Maharaj also for arranging such a wonderful lecture, because your lectures are always appealing. And one comment and a question, Maharaj, you were telling about Prakriti, how she's feminine and cannot bear job, and Maharaj was adding to it. She's inviting us just to teach a lesson. Very striking. Maharaj, when speaking about Aditi, like her sexual desire, and about speaking about the illicit, it's an illicit relation. So how to speak such things in public, the classes and all, and tell having this thing in the evening is so abominable that they got demanding children and all that. So they say Lord's rules are so heavy, because Lord's rules are we have to follow with them. So in the preaching application, so how
I don't hear you so properly. Can you repeat?
Even the evening or this attitude itself is very much innocent. How to tell them?
Maharaj, can you repeat the question?
Please, to paraphrase the question, she's saying,
Maharaj, am I audible on this mic?
and her illicit. Yeah, you're better now.
Okay. No,
Yeah,
speaking about this pastime, of Aditi pastime,
Yes.
of an illicit time relationship. So, illicit relationship, when we define within the married life, how to speak to newcomers, they hear this Nashmadev pastime, what was the cause, the primary cause of the appearance and all that. So, it sounds too bad for them. See, how can tell if illicit relationship even within a married life?
Yeah, but see, every human being have to understand simple things that, there is a proper time for everything. You cannot do anything anytime. Even little child can understand this. Sometimes children, when it comes time to sleep, they want to play. When it comes time to eat, they want to do something else, or they want to sleep. And the discipline is, usually what is discipline? Discipline is to do everything in the proper time. Get up in this time, get to bed in this time, eat at that time. That's regulation means. So, and normal people, they don't have problems with this, according to the season, according to the time of the day, according to the age. There are certain natural limitations or natural regulations. So, this dusk time is not a very good time to do sex. Just wait a little bit, no problem. You can do it. Just it's just a question of waiting. What's so frustrating about it? It's very natural that for every activity you have a proper time. And this Sandhi time, it's a very special time, because Sandhi is the junction time when the energies are different. Therefore, it is said that you should not even eat in Sandhi. You can eat before Sandhi, you can eat after Sandhi, after sunset when it's already dark. But within this 45 or whatever minutes of Sandhi, you should not eat, because the food will be turned into poison in your body. The food, due to the influence of external environment, the food will not be beneficial for you. It will just create ama. So that's the time, and what's the big deal to respect the time? This is
Sorry, but not only time. What I'm asking is, this is illicit within marriage. We are telling you, it's only for procreation.
Okay.
So people who want to take initiation. I know few people. They stand.
No. Okay. If you, I got it.
Okay.
No, if you are talking about this, then we should not, and Srila Prabhupada, he didn't stress it too much actually, especially in the beginning. He said that you should regulate your sexual impetus by being properly married, and in the marriage there are some restrictions as well. You know, there are certain rules where, you know, the having sex is not beneficial, is prohibited actually. Certain days, you know, certain like Ekadashi day, it's not very good, and so on and so forth. The restrictions are there, but it's not really illicit relationship. If it's within the marriage and within the proper regulations, then it's okay, you know. But ultimately, what people have to understand is that every action has a purpose. And if we, like for example, eating, the purpose of eating is to get energy. And the eating has side effect, the enjoyment, right? If we make the side effect of this activity as our primary goal, and we start eating for enjoyment, not for getting proper nourishment and proper energy, then the result will be not so favorable, because we will ultimately get sick. Because the real purpose of this act of eating is to get nourishment. You agree? Enjoyment is a side effect. It's a nice side effect, and there is nothing wrong with the side effect as long as the primary purpose of this act is maintained. But if it becomes upside down, then the problems start. If the enjoyment will become the primary purpose and nourishment will become side effect, then, you know, we will get all kinds of diseases. The same with the sex. You know, the primary purpose of this act is procreation of children. If the primary purpose of this, and enjoyment is the side effect, if the primary purpose of this act will be replaced with the side effect, you will have all kinds of problems which people have. But if you have this purpose in mind, and you primarily try to do it with this purpose, you know, conscientiously, then the side effect will be there, and it will be proper. So that's, it becomes illicit if you make the side effect as the prime goal or prime purpose. I answered your delicate question. Okay, I guess we should stop. It's already too late.
Maharaj, how can I thank you with just words alone on this virtual platform? Thank you very much. However, I should try to thank you very, very much for your visit. And please bless all of these students to learn the Bhakti Vaibhav and go through the Bhakti Vaibhav sessions, learn Bhagavatam very seriously and preach it to others, so that they may also be benefited. Thank you very much again, Maharaj, for your very detailed, painstaking presentation. Thank you very much. Highly valued and appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hari Bol Maharaj.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
We all pray to Krishna that he will give great help and you will be able to preach to many, many more people and make them all more powerfully Krishna conscious. Hari Bol Maharaj.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.